Mi gente, you already know who it is. It's the radioactive pop with Danny Limelight, United Wrestling Network World Heavyweight Champion. And make sure you tune into the Alliance blog every week. You heard it here first. Straight from Bobby.
Okay, guys, we're back. Did you miss us? Because we missed you.
Rules?
There are no rules.
What rules?
This is a revolution, damn it!
You'll hear things you've never heard before.
What in the wide world of sports is going on here?
Who are those guys?
And then there's the other guys.
We're the other guys. We're the guys nobody ever bets on.
The following program is intended for mature audiences.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show.
It's time for the Other Alliance Guys podcast with your hosts, Tim, Dave, and Jeremy.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, brother. We are the Other Alliance Guys. What can we tell you? We are a presentation of alliance-wrestling.com, your number one source for news and information for the National Wrestling Alliance, sometimes the United Wrestling Network, and various other independents and promotions around the world. My name is Tim, now with 100% more Facebook. I don't know why we're back on Facebook, but I'm back on Facebook. We'll talk about that later. And an apple a day keeps his foot out of your ass. It's Championship Wrestling from Jeremy. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well. And yourself, gentlemen?
Not bad. Not too bad.
You can't complain.
Yeah, no one listens anyway. And that, of course, is our fantasy booker extraordinaire fighting out of the great city of Baltimore. It's Dave Scooby. How are you, buddy?
Doing well. I got to give props to Jeremy. Love the Willy Wonka with Billy. It's Billy Wonka.
Yeah,
okay,
that's great.
Let's see if he can make some magic and make the NWA palatable.
Absolutely. Hey, Jeremy, in the background, can you boot this person who's doing something in our chat room right now? I don't know how to do that. But here's Willie. Willie, we never boot, the flag bearer of the Other Alliance Guys. Rolando Freeman could be one of the Oompa Loompas from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Yes, he could. In fact, he may be. We'll have to see. As Dave said, NWA debuting on Roku. We're going to talk about that a little bit. We did last week, but it starts tomorrow. Tomorrow. Even I bought a Roku stick. That says something. I'm excited. I don't want to be disappointed. We'll talk about that in a sec. Jeremy missed us last week. He got called into work, and like the stalwart soldier he is, he returned to his place of employment to solve a critical problem, I'm sure. And he missed his Mount Rushmore of tag teams. So we're going to give him the opportunity to go through his 4 greatest tag teams of all time with you. We're going to touch on the greatest tag teams from the 1950s to the 1970s and how you need to go back and find some of this footage on YouTube and elsewhere. We probably need to start talk about tag teams on a regular basis because there's so many teams you can go back before TV or the early days of television and find stuff on. And then we're going to talk about the subject of the hour and talk about it briefly because we have very strong feelings on the whole thing, and for some of us it's complicated. That's, of course, the legacy of Hulk Hogan, passed recently, and how that meshes with the legacy of Terry Bollea, the man behind the Hulk Hogan gimmick. Brother, Jeremy's going to be doing something different for Championship Wrestling with Jeremy segment tonight. He won't be talking about the United Wrestling Network this week. I'm sure he'll tell us why. He's going to talk about some TNA and what they've been doing and where he thinks they're going. And then Dave's going to anchor the show, as always, as we go back to Mr. Bollea and or at least Mr. Hogan and hypothesize what if Hulk Hogan hadn't been the third man in the NWO. Well, would it have worked? We'll talk about that. But let's go from the beginning. The NWA debuts on Roku tomorrow night, I believe.
Tomorrow. Yep.
Yeah. Tomorrow, I don't know what time. I think it's 8 p.m.
8 p.m.
Eastern. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that is the latest venture and efforts from Lightning One, Mr. Corgan, getting the NWA, off of the CW recently, going to X, taking them now to Roku. X always felt fellas like it was going to be temporary until they found the next big thing. Jeremy, do you think Roku's the next big thing for the NWA, and do you think it's going to be more successful?
No.
No and no.
No and no. Roku's not a television channel. They are a streaming platform and smart TV operating system more so than a streaming platform. And even then, in the sense of being a streaming platform, I don't see the NWA getting any better of a deal than possibly more of a percentage in ad revenue than what they were getting from the CW. And that's all that they were getting from the CW was an ad revenue deal.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
CW gave them no money towards production costs or anything like that. And that forced Billy to come off of some money to production a little bit more. No, it's not the next. It's not the grand tidal wave that's going to carry them to mainstream success.
Hopefully, it gives them something because boy, the NWA has been struggling for a long time on that part of it, Dave. They just trying to find that home that will take them to the next level. What holds the NWA back if this turns out to be it? If like that path is there, and like more people are watching on Roku. What's gonna be the main obstacles for them to get over?
Well, I mean, like Jeremy said, I mean, granted, it is a streaming service. It's a start. It's a place to start off with. But they need to. It's almost one of these things of, as much as I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt, they almost need like a standards and practices set down, saying, this is what we need. This is what you need to provide us, and if this happens over the next 3, 6, 9 months, and you stick with this, we'll bump this up to a serious channel, or come up with. I mean, it's stipulations that it's Billy should know this from being a musician and being out on tour. That I mean, when he goes in and does a concert, there's demands. I need this, I need this, I need this. He's setting forward what he wants. The programming entity or the streaming, however you want to look at it, whoever is presenting the NWA program needs to say, this is what we need, period. I don't want stupid behind the scenes stuff. If you're going to do interviews, they're going to be in ring or at a podium. There needs to be, don't do the little skits. That's just stupid. That's a waste of time when you're doing shit. Unless it makes sense, don't do it. Just give me wrestling, give me some promos, and give me an outcome. If I don't get an outcome this week, pick it up the next week and revisit what happened. Right. And the story continues.
I
mean, if they can do tapings either every 4 to 6 weeks, they can make adjustments within 3 weeks. If something doesn't work and people are bitching about it, make an adjustment. But I mean, they seriously need to have standards and practices set forward of this is what we're going to do. This is what we want you to do. If you follow the rules, cool. If not, we can't work together. I'm not sure what the financials are, and it really doesn't matter. It's one of these things of they need to step up their game and just put their best foot forward and just give us the best.
So it's the schedule, I think, is a big one too. And they've somehow got to figure that one out, right? As you mentioned. And as you're touching on now, the booking, like I've been away from the NWA minus the territories here and there as we tour around them, the three of us. We've seen some things we've liked, a few things from Exodus Pro or from Joe Kazana. We liked a couple of things at a dog pad. We saw a whole bunch of stuff, including at some of those places that we didn't like. But there was some stuff to go, okay, like there's something here that they can use and build on. But I've been away from the NWA proper for a while, and my feeling is like that the booking has not improved, and that there's been a focus, Jeremy, on trying to find platforms and changing up the way things are doing stuff, and all of that is important. But I feel like if you serve me up, forgive me for this because I haven't watched it in a while, but if you serve me up a plate of dog shit and you put a piece of parsley on it, or you make soup out of it, or you try to make it into a flambe, it's still a piece of dog shit. So has the food improved, Jeremy? On the plate, has there been any? No, you're shaking your head already. I can't hear you, and you might be muted.
I shake my head no, and I do that, and I haven't seen what they're going to offer tomorrow on Roku. So, and with that said, I rescind that answer, and I say I'll get back to you next week because I will watch. I will watch.
So will I. I'm coming back. I'm watching it with home show.
Hence the thumbnail. We're back to Billy Land now. We're back to Billy's Wonka Factory. What are we going to get? Are we going to get more gags? Are we going to get more Eric Smalls? I don't know. I not that I don't want Eric Smalls to be wrestling. I do. I am a little person wrestling fan. Make it make sense, though, as Dave says. Make it make sense.
Make it make sense.
Gags has a place in wrestling. More Hood Slam than NWA, though. Hood Slam is straight up adult wrestling. GCW is more adult. It would fit in a lot more there. Billy's trying it. NWA is a family product,
right?
So I'm check back with me next week, and I'll let you know what I think.
Yeah, right along those lines.
Hoping that it's changed.
Yeah, me too. Right along those lines, Dave, I'm looking for not necessarily this, but as an example, charging out of the gate tomorrow night, 8 p.m. You got your world's heavyweight champion, Tom Latimer. Looks great, sounds great, wrestles great. He's the man in the NWA for a reason, and I want a Trevor Murdoch coming out going, you know what, bro? I only got a couple of years left. I enjoyed being champ twice. I'm going to kick your ass for that title. I want something along those lines. I want to feel it. I want to fight. I want something to make me go, okay, what's the new direction? What's the new action? What do you think, Dave?
Well, that's the thing. It's a new platform for them, but it's the same old, same old. This is going to be Crockett Cup, and it's cool. that they're actually going to be showing it, and I hope they show the best of the best. But they're always going to be on the back burner. We're always going to be 2, 3, 4 months behind unless they switch things up. If they can, I mean, Jeremy may talk about it later with TNA, but TNA does monthly tapings, and now with their affiliation with NXT, they're looking to go live 52 weeks a year. They can make adjustments on a monthly taping, but still, you're 3 weeks to 4 weeks behind on a monthly taping, depending on how quickly you get that first week out there. If you wait a week after filming, your 4 weeks becomes 5 weeks, and you're always adding on. So it's one of these things that they need to step up. And I mean, as much as I'm for the expansion of the NWA as a whole, they need to take anybody and everybody that isn't a champion or a contender for a championship and put them out in the territories. That these next couple programs that they have when they have tapings, they need to mean something going into an event, that you need to have your tag team champions with 2 other tag teams that are battling to go after those titles. Same thing with the women. Same thing with the national title, the junior heavyweight title, the world title. Right now, there's way too many titles in the NWA for the amount of show that they have on any platforms. Unless they choose to do a NWA USA type program and send those titles out to the territories and just do a Saturday showing, a Saturday show for YouTube, that the NWA needs to step back, highlight their most important titles, and put everything else on the back burner. That's just my opinion.
I think we all kind of agree. We're excited. We're trepidatious about the whole thing. We're kind of ready to go. What's it going to look like? How bad is it going to be? How good could it be? We'll see what happens. But I hope it's not just, what it has been served up so far. I hope it's something fresher and a little newer. And I guess we'll see. I'm going to change tacks. I'm going to go, fellas, into this one first, if you don't mind. We mentioned it off the top. We'll kind of get it over with. Welcome, Chris, by the way. What happened to David Marquez? Dave Marquez runs the United Wrestling Network, which Jeremy here primarily reports from, except for tonight. He is a creative mind behind that concept, although I think he outsources his booking right now. He's not involved with the NWA. Yes, Bruce Tharpe certainly ran the NWA differently. There you go. But let's talk about the legacy of Hulk Hogan. And we kind of debated about this behind the scenes for a couple of minutes and what it means for, you can go onto any wrestling website or any wrestling podcast and hear the litany about Hulk Hogan coming out of Florida and, going over to get his teeth cut over in Memphis with Lawler and, being Sterling Golden and being Terry the Hulk Boulder and, going to the AWA and going overseas and, eventually just kind of rising up to be a guy where the AWA is going to eventually hang their hat on him. You can get all that stuff before Vince picks him up and the rest is history. And we encourage you to do that because there is no pro wrestling on the national level really to one degree or another without the Hulk Hogan component. You could argue that Vince McMahon, and I think you could argue that Vince McMahon would have found somebody else. But tell me somebody else who was available at that time, at that place, when Vince McMahon was making his move. But something that Jim Cornette's podcast said, guys, I just went, wow, isn't that true? The 3 most powerful figures in the industry back at 1983 or so Hulk Hogan, Vince McMahon, Ric Flair. And if Gordon said, if you had told me back then that those guys were all going to have their, their just desserts handed to them on one way or another, I would have said you were crazy. But they were on top of the world. But Hogan himself is, for me, I'll go first. For me, it's a little bit complicated. Because the reason I became a wrestling fan, I think, if I remember correctly, the reason J-Cal, our illustrious El Presidente, became a wrestling fan. The first guy I ever fell in love with, marked out for, whatever you want to say, was Hulk Hogan. And I demanded that my parents get me a Roddy Piper t-shirt, the one with the panther on it, and have some, because I didn't get it yet.
Bro,
and I had a Hulk Hogan
shirt.
Oh, it was the best shirt.
Yeah.
And I had a Hulk Hogan shirt as well. And I wore those things out. And, I watched live on closed circuit TV from Hamilton's Cops Coliseum as Hogan slammed Andre. You know, I'm using the air quotes, the first time anyone had ever slammed Andre. Of course, that had been done dozens of times before that, but we didn't know that. And, how he exploded, what he did in terms of just being the way he looked, the way he talked, and the way he carried for, you could argue, between 10 and 20 years, the number one drawing guy of all time. The Rock drew more money and Stone Cold drew more money, they say. But I think the argument there is that they did that for shorter periods of time. And so, as Jeremy said quite wisely in our Discord, Hulk Hogan put a lot of asses in a lot of seats. And for the fact that I'm here is, talking to you guys, is because, at least in part, because of Hulk Hogan. None of this, for me, and what makes it complicated, excuses what he has said about being a racist, stuff that he did inside the industry to hold other people down. Doesn't work for me, brother. Stuff that he did, just gross stuff that he did with, Bubba the Love Sponge, and the whole tape about the wife and that type of thing, and just for the last 20 years, just disgracing what he had done the previous 20 years. And in the end, having thought about it probably more than it deserves, I don't think that you can separate the character from the man. And I know at least one of these gentlemen thinks precisely that way. It's complicated for me, and that I was a fan. It's hard for me because who he became made me very much not a fan. And in the end, I have to end up with the fuck that guy, and let his legacy be what it is. I don't need to talk about him any more than I need to talk about Chris Benoit. Jeremy, what do you think, man?
Well, I want to preface this with saying that in preparation for this conversation, I not sponsored here, but much like you are shooting for a sponsorship with Gatorade, and Keith Cola, if you're watching, I got one of your Bubba Kush 100 milligrammers right now in preparation for this conversation.
Yeah, but do you have the mom and pop shop that created G0, which is Pepsi Cola? No? Carry on.
Much like I said in our Discord chat, it can't be denied that Hogan put asses in seats. With that said, any argument of Terry Bollea said that is moot and a dead point, because Terry Bollea died in the mid '80s. Hulk Hogan killed that man. buried him. Linda helped, and Vince McMahon was right there patting him on the back saying, good job. Good job. He lived that character. He was Hulk Hogan.
Mm-hmm.
He said a lot of terrible shit. He did a lot of terrible things to keep people down, to try and intimidate. He had Mark Calloway, the Undertaker, questioning if he had just completely ended any semblance of a wrestling career moving forward because the Hulkster wanted to play that he got hurt taking a tombstone. Whenever it was clear as day that man's top of his head was about yay far off the mat.
Right.
He took so good care of fucking Hogan in that. I'm an individual that whenever I lose respect for a wrestler, and they go by a different name, I refer to them by their shoot. The Rock is Dwayne. I don't give a fuck. I'll call him that to his face. Your name is Dwayne. I have no respect for him. Hulk is the same way, but again, Hulk is Terry. Terry is Hulk. They're one and the same there. I've spent enough time. Your turn, Dave.
There you go.
Well, I'm going to talk about Hulk Hogan outside of wrestling. We all know what he did within wrestling, both the good and the bad. But I mean, he did things that, I mean, like Roddy Piper was also in a couple movies. But Hulk Hogan, I mean, he hit the big time in Rocky III back in 1982 as Thunder Lips. And that helped bring recognition to him as a wrestler, as well as where he was wrestling. I wish the AWA had done more with him before he went on to the WWF. But I mean, Hogan did movies, TV, did things outside of wrestling. And thank God he was never officially made the bassist of Metallica, or they would not be around today. If you know, you know. Just Google Hulk Hogan Metallica bassist. You'll get a laugh out of that. But Hogan, while none of his movies were really big as himself, who knows where some of the wrestlers and now movie stars, Batista. Would Batista have gone into movies if Hulk wouldn't have gone into movies, or Roddy hadn't gone into movies, or even The Rock had gone into movies? So it's one of those things that outside of his wrestling, he did have several movies that were, I'm not going to say good, but I'm not going to say total trash. They're funny. They're funny if you're high, drunk, or just looking to pass the time. He also had a couple TV shows, Thunder in Paradise, Hogan Knows Best. But it just seems like him and his family couldn't stay out of the quote-unquote limelight, whether it was for good or bad. That everybody in his household, his friends, family, other members of his quote-unquote entourage seemed to have skeletons or bad things that had happened to them due to his, I guess, location around him, due to them being around Hogan one way or another. But I mean, like the TV show, you take the good, you take the bad, you take them both, and there you have the facts of life. You got to flip that coin. Sometimes it's heads, sometimes it's tails. So, I mean, Hogan, for what he did, the good things, I give a thumbs up, but there's just as many bad things that can tarnish almost everything good that he did. So it's just take everything with a grain of salt. And while I won't say I'm glad he passed, I'm glad that Hulk Hogan as a quote-unquote character, as a person, is no longer around. It was just for all the good he could have done, there's always the bad. And it's things like that you just can't get over.
Yeah.
I mean, like people have said, I mean, as good of a wrestler as Chris Benoit is or was, that doesn't forgive him for what he did to his family.
Right.
It's just, you can't look at the good without looking at the bad. And that's about all I have to say.
And I think that's exactly what we're doing, right? We're no good without the bad with that guy, and where we go from here, I think it'll be interesting to see as a wrestling community how he's going to be remembered in the years to come, and probably at least for now, no better than maybe he deserves. So we'll leave him at that.
The biggest lesson you could ever learn from Hulk Hogan was to take your roids and say they're vitamins, brother.
What was that expression you used about living long enough in the Discord? If you're either the hero
or the villain,
or to see yourself become the villain.
Yeah.
What was it? 2 seconds. I think I put it in Lambs, didn't I?
Yeah.
You either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
No, I'm sure we all generally agree right there. We'd all rather die being the hero than end up like that guy did. What a way to go. Let's move on. Let's talk about something you missed last week, Jeremy, when you were saving your company from complete and utter financial ruin. And that was the Mount Rushmore of tag teams of professional wrestling. Your 4 greatest tag teams in pro wrestling history. I'm going to give you the floor here. I'll throw up some pictures in the background. Get after it.
So my number 1 tag team on the Mount Rushmore is the Steiner brothers.
And Natalia wants to leave a comment to let Papa know she tuned into the stream. Is that you?
Yes. Hi, Boogie. Papa loves you.
Oh, that's cute.
My first tag team is the Steiner brothers. The Steiner brothers were unlike any tag team I had ever seen before whenever they came out. And were a reason why I got into Roman Greco and freestyle wrestling in school. My mentality was that's how you got into wrestling. You know, you get really good at high school and college wrestling and stuff, and then much like basketball and football and baseball, a scout would see you and be like, "Hey, do you want to sign with the WCW or WWF?" At the time, I didn't know at that point. But anyways, another thing that I always liked about them was they weren't polished pro wrestlers, but they were some of the best, still today, technical wrestlers to ever step in the fucking ring. And again, that was attributed to that Greco-Roman freestyle wrestling background that they had. They never felt like a gimmick whenever they were talking or in the ring. They won the WCW United States Tag Team titles once, the WCW Tag Team titles 7 times, and the WWF Tag Team titles twice. They utilized tag team moves and finishers on a match-by-match basis. If the Steiners were in the ring, you know you were going to see a few tag team moves, and they always look legit and brutal. And then, from there, Scott went on to have a successful singles career. Not the best talker, but had he not been a good talker, we wouldn't have got the Steiner math promo. And I'll stand and argue with you all day that that's the greatest fucking wrestling promo of all time. I will argue that fact with you. Greater than Hard Times, greater than any Flair promo. The greatest promo of all fucking time. Bar none. Next, we've got a not very much talked about tag team that was near and dear to my heart. I got to see them a lot growing up as a kid. And that was Moondog Spot and Moondog Rex. I fucking love the Moondogs, man. They looked like complete and utter savages and wild men when they came out to the ring. They had that big, it looked like a femur bone. It just, they would bite you. They would growl at you as they walked past. Like fucking dogs, just straight up like dogs. They were 3-time USWA World Tag Team Champions, 1-time World Wrestling Council Tag Champs, 1-time Caribbean World Wrestling Council Tag Champs, 2-time World Wrestling Council North American Tag Champs, 1-time WWF Tag Team Champions. Spot replaced Moondog King during that title run when Moondog King was denied entrance back into the United States in 1981. And they were also 1-time AWA Southern Tag Champs, as well as being inducted into the Memphis Wrestling Hall of Fame. Moondog Spot had the longest run going from 81 to 96, and then a short run from June to November of 03. I was fascinated with these guys as a kid. Like I said, I got to see them at the Coliseum whenever I'd get to go there with my grandfather and my mom. And like I said, they'd fucking growl at you and shit as they were coming out and everything. And I completely bought the gimmick as a kid then, man. And then whenever they were in the WWF, their manager was fucking Captain Lou Albano, and I blame him for my fascination with piercings, and so there's that. Then we go to my number 3 team, and that's the Hardy Boys. The Hardy Boys debuted shortly after I got back into wrestling there in the late 90s. And they looked and dressed like me and my friends. They had the big baggy jeans. They had the unconventional colored hair dye, and they jumped off of shit. Like, I'm scared to death of heights. But for some reason, as a teenager, if I saw a ladder next to a roof on the way home, I bet anybody that was around me, I'll jump off of that for $1, and I'd make a couple of bucks. I don't know. I went cliff diving. I can't swim, and I'm scared of heights. I went cliff diving into some stripper pits in Du Bois County, Indiana. I have a buddy down there to catch me. Big Dean. But, you know, it just, they felt right there with me, kind of. They helped usher in the tables, ladders, and chairs match, for better or worse, depending on what side of the fence you sit on that, you know. You could say that they were kind of part of the impetus for all the flippy shit that we see nowadays. You know, again, for better or worse, whatever side of the coin you sit on. I'm not going to yuck your yum, as my good buddy Timmy Thunder will say. You know, you do you. You like what you like. I may not like it.
Yep.
No.
It's very funny, because I know you missed this last week. You picked the Hardys, and independently of each other, Dave picked the Dudley Boys, and I picked Edge and Christian. So you can't go wrong. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
They were great ushers of what was to come next in wrestling. All three of those tag teams, as far as what we would see as tag teams, you know, all three of their influence is very obvious on this new crop of tag team wrestling that we see nowadays.
Yep.
But they've held titles in WWE, TNA, WCW, WWE. I add that in there because it was at that odd little time. Ring of Honor and NWA 2000. Ooh, digging deep for a cut there. They have back-to-back Match of the Year winners in 2001 in 2000 and 2001, and they share those with the Dudleys and Edge and Christian. They're 13-time tag title runs between. They have 13 tag title runs between the WWE, TNA, and Ring of Honor, and they hold the distinction of being the only tag team to have held WWE, WCW, TNA, Ring of Honor, and both Raw and SmackDown tag team titles.
Wow.
On top of that, Jeff would go on to hold the WWE Championship and the WWE Heavyweight Championship 2 times, the ECW Championship, and the TNA World Title 3 times, with Matt also getting the TNA World Title twice, and they just won their 4th TNA World Title, spoiler alert, at this past Slammiversary. Yeah, which I'll talk about here in a little bit.
Awesome.
We then go to my number 4, and I can almost guarantee you that no one is thinking of the tag team that I have for my number 4. If you've watched the show long enough, though, it won't come as a surprise to you. My number 4, and I want you all to say it with me and turn down your earbuds if you've got them in, is Beef Wendy.
Thirst Trap. Look at these guys.
That is the picture of personification of excellence in tag team. Any picture that you put up of them. They're not the biggest guys. They're not the most talked about. They haven't been up to the big leagues per se. But pound for pound, to me, some of the greatest fucking tag team wrestling that I've ever witnessed. Go back on the Memphis Wrestling YouTube channel Look up UWN Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, and just look up their matches against the institution, the Wolf Zaddies, institution, the Wolf Zaddies, Midnight Heat.
Midnight Heat.
Who, in my opinion, if I had my way in the money, I would build them their own little monument next to the Sphinx, because the Midnight Heat are like really fucking good throwbacks as well to old school tag team wrestling and that mentality. What gives Beef Candy the edge is they remind me a lot more of Tully and Arn in their execution and their tag team game plan and everything. And I just, Beef Candy is just fucking awesome to say. It's chef's kiss.
Where does Reno Scum fit in that pantheon for you?
What's that?
Where does Reno Scum fit for you in that pantheon of Jeremy's favorite tag teams?
Reno Scum are in my top 15.
Right.
I really liked what Reno Scum did. There were elements of the Nasty Boys in there who at points I was fans of and not fans of. There were elements of like the Bushwhackers in there who I was always fans of, and the Moondogs to an extent. So Reno Scum is definitely in my top 15. I would say probably 12 or so.
Yeah, man. I loved your picks. I thought they were really thoughtful and different, especially like you said, no one would pick Beef Candy just because the UWN, global presentation isn't there, right?
Right.
But hey, you're a fan of the product, as we all have been, and great pick, man. That's awesome. Dave, you want to talk about some of the greatest tag teams of the 1950s and the 1970s, and I think we should touch on some of these things every week as we go. But we just got into this tag team kind of rhythm, and we thought, we're going to talk about it a bit more, the ones you might not have seen on TV. You want to kick us off a little bit?
Well, I picked the Fabulous Kangaroos.
You beat me. That was my number one.
Well, they're one of mine. I mean, I'll pass it along to you. I have a couple others.
No. You carry on. You carry on.
Now, if you're thinking, okay, Fabulous Kangaroos, okay, this is weird. Okay, I've watched a little. There is video of them on YouTube. They formed back in 1957 and basically had a run till the early 80s. Now, the first incarnation of the Kangaroos was Al Costello with Roy Heffernan. They adopted an ultra-Australian gimmick. They had boomerangs, bush hats, and if you ever heard Waltzing Matilda, that was their entrance music back in the day. So it's one of those things of, I mean, they're one of the top 5, if not number 1 tag teams of all time.
Yeah.
And they don't get the recognition because tag team wrestling back in the day wasn't what it hit in the 70s and 80s. It was still there. It was a chance to get more wrestlers in the ring. But your singles wrestlers had more of a influence back in the 50s and 60s rather than the tag teams. But I mean,
it's true.
Like I said, they're one of the top tag teams to ever compete in professional wrestling. And
they didn't invent tag team wrestling, and there were 3 different members over time, but
Yeah.
they popularized it. And, you know, you can't start talking about the greatest tag teams of all time. They're not in a Mount Rushmore because they're not on a national stage. None of you, well, not none of everybody, but, you know, most people wouldn't know who the hell we're talking about. But they were the greatest tag team, arguably, in the history of the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was checking YouTube to make sure that, yeah, there is some videos that you can click on and watch. And I mean, while they had different members, anytime they were working as a team, I mean, they literally put the team in tag team wrestling. They had great moves for back in the day when tag wrestling wasn't as big as it became in the 70s and 80s. But speaking of that, the 70s and 80s, a great tag team can endure whether they lose a member or it moves on. Now, Gene Anderson formed the original Minnesota Wrecking Crew with his kayfabe brother Lars back in '66. Did you choose him too?
I did. We really got a quote. I feel like we came to the ball wearing the same dress. You carry on.
But I mean, the Minnesota Wrecking Crew, I mean, the Andersons. If you know the name Anderson, it's Gene, Lars, then Ole came around. Their quote-unquote the renaming of Ole Anderson. They dominated tag wrestling in the 70s. Georgia, I mean, they won the NWA World Tag Titles 8 times. And then down the line, Ole became the head of the Minnesota Wrecking Crew, and he brought in his quote-unquote cousin, Arn.
Mm-hmm.
And they, down the line, became part of the Four Horsemen, also still being the Minnesota Wrecking Crew. And it's one of these things that they dominated tag wrestling in the 70s. Like I said, especially in the NWA. Ric Flair came into the picture. He was promoted as a distant cousin of the Andersons that had a falling out with them. And then Flair and Greg the Hammer Valentine ended up tagging up and going against the Andersons. And I mean, it's a story to be told that by like 1981, Gene had stopped wrestling. That's when a couple years later, Ole reformed the crew with Arn, and they ended up winning even more tag team titles. Then down the line, you may remember that in the early 90s, there was a masked version of the Minnesota Wrecking Crew. And that was the Beverly Brothers, Mike Enos, and Wayne Bloom. They became the Beverly Brothers in the WWF. But I mean, it's one of these things that they were able to take what had worked in the past. It worked in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, and into the 90s. And even today, they have the Fighting Anderson, C.W. Anderson, and Brock Anderson. They're known as the Wrecking Crew in MLW. So what's old is new again. If it works, you just have to find your niche of what works in what category. And honorable mention I give to, I mean, any of these teams could be on the Mount Rushmore, the Rock and Roll Express, what they've always done. I mean, they epitomize tag team wrestling. Same thing with the Midnight Express. Also, I mean, the Blackjacks, big guys that could wrestle. You had the Freebirds that brought in the Freebird rule of 2 out of 3.
Oh no, that was Coco. Never mind.
And I mean, Fantastics. I mean,
fucking Fantastics.
It's one of these things that all the wrestlers that have done the thing that if you look back at the 80s, I mean, the Midnight Rockers becoming the Rockers, that all of them had either a rock and roll background or they were like the male models or the male strippers, but they all work together. I mean, it's amazing. They went from territory to territory, and then when the territories dried up, they ended up moving on. I mean, WCW had the Rockers there. WWF had the Rockers, and then a lot of these teams, when they split up, one member finds a way to move up the ladder as a single star.
And the other one is Marty Jannetty.
And like you said, the other one's Marty
Jannetty. So much so that that's the joke now, right?
Who's the Marty of the crew? Yeah. But I mean, there's if you could do a Mount Rushmore of tag teams, a legit one, there would have to be probably at least 10 tag teams on that Mount Rushmore, just because of all the different times and eras and styles that there's not just four. Everything is subjective to what your likes and your dislikes are. And I mean, you can even look back on like ECW, the Eliminators. My God, those guys, Perry Saturn and John Cronus, look those guys up on YouTube and check out some of their matches.
Yep.
It's amazing. Harlem Heat back in the day. Amazing. They moved on, bigger and better things for Booker T. But it's one of these things that without tag team wrestling, you probably wouldn't have half of the champions in the big leagues that you do have. That if you look at a lot of the wrestlers now and how they started out, they were in a tag team at least for a little while to start off with.
I agree, and I feel like we should probably, in the interest of time, say let's do round two and let Jeremy take the lead next week, just for the 50s, the 70s, the 80s, whatever you want to do, Jer. But
okay.
I'll
go 80s because being born in 77, I don't have a lot to reference.
Yeah, I'll go earlier on, 50s, 60s, and maybe even into the 70s. Like there's tag teams I want to spend like a couple of minutes on each, like Nick Bockwinkel and Ray Stevens, and Willie's talked about the Crusher and the
and Brody, Brody, yeah.
The Bruiser and the Crusher even, and there's other teams that maybe some guys haven't heard of before, like the Dusek Riot Squad. What a story! You're gonna love this one. So let's talk about that one next week. Patrick Moore's here. Hey, Patrick. I always wondered about something when tracing the NWA World Tag Team titles. Do you count the World Tag Team titles from Jim Crockett Promotions, or do you start in 1992? So the World Tag Team titles have an interesting history. And you could go to the Facebook page of Alliance Gold and look at the write-up for the tag team titles. But where the NWA had one world championship for singles, they allowed territories to have the world tag team titles in different territories to a point where at one point they recognized, I believe, 13 different world tag team champions. When television took over and Crockett came up, they were wiped out, and the lineage falls into the Crockett titles. But if you want the full, just straight information, you can go to wrestling-titles.com. Do not trust Wikipedia. Wikipedia is not your friend. The great Hisa over there will give you all the information. Like the stuff that has been done on that site is unbelievable. It'll tell you exactly how everything trees down into one set of tag team titles. It's pretty great. So we'll come back to that next week. We'll let Jeremy do the into the 80s. Let us go now then, if we can, to a slightly different version of a segment we like to call Championship Wrestling from Jeremy.
Attention everyone, one.
School is in session. Oh boy, is this great!
Let me talk to you.
Time for Championship Wrestling from Jeremy.
So I have normally I would throw up just the TNA logo up here, but I'm throwing up the spoiler alert logo instead this week because Jeremy's not talking about UW and he's talking about TNA. What's going on, Jeremy?
So the spoiler alert is up because last weekend was TNA Slammiversary, and I don't know if everyone has gotten an opportunity to watch it yet or not. So I wanted to put that up there because I will be giving some stuff away. And with Slammiversary happening last week, we saw another dramatic shift in the TNA title scene. Masa Slamovich lost the TNA World's title, Women's World title, or the Knockouts title. I won't refer to it as the Knockouts title. I know it is, but it's the Women's World title. But she lost that to NXT's current Women's Champion, JC Jane, in a winner-takes-all match. Leon Slater beat Moose, of all fucking people, for the X Division title to become the youngest champ ever and received the personal stamp of approval from AJ Styles, who made his return to TNA at Slammiversary. More on that later, too. The Hardy Boys participated in a four-way ladder match for the TNA World title, tag team titles. This was match 33rd and Jeff's 39th ladder match. They faced off against the Nemeth, Nick and Ryan Nemeth, First Class, AJ Francis and Casey Navarro, and the Rascals, Zach Wentz, and filling in for an injured Trey Miguel, the young GOAT Myron Reed. Happy to see him in TNA. The Hardys, as I stated earlier, would go on to win their fourth TNA World Tag title. After the match, Bully Ray, Bubba Ray, came out to challenge Matt and Jeff to one last match between the Hardy Boys and the Dudleys. In the world title match between Joe Hendry, Mike Santana, and current TNA World Champion NXT's Trick Williams, TNA original Frankie Kazarian would interfere by pulling the ref out while Joe had Trick covered and the ref was coming down for the three. Trick would retain after he threw Santana out and covered Hendry, who had taken a spin the block discus lariat from Santana. For Impact this week, Santino opened the show and reassured the TNA audience that TNA would get its gold back and take some NXT gold along the way. As tomorrow on NXT, Santino will face Ethan Page for the NXT North American Championship. Masha then came out and declared she wanted her a rematch, and Santino granted it for next week on Impact. The System then came out next, and they're ready to fight for their home of TNA. Moose says that Leon earned the X Division title at Slammiversary, and he now has his sights set on taking back the world title from Trick Williams, who came out with First Class. Trick said that Trick said that he's not worried about Moose. He's focused on the future and making TNA Trick-N-A. The system then claimed that they are the best faction in TNA, and this brought out Mustafa Ali in Order 4. Mustafa has a mic, and that's always a great thing. He tells Trick if he ever calls him out again, he'll bury him like The Undertaker, and then set his sights on the system and started cutting a promo on them as him and Order 4 making their way to the ring. Mustafa Ali is on another level right now. You give that man a mic, and you might as well just be handing him like a Desert Eagle 50 cal because he's mowing down everyone in his path with it. And his wrestling is just still top notch. They make their way to the ring though, and as he's cutting the promo, they just attack. Cue the brawl and security. After the break, we see Santino backstage with the system, and Matt Cardona comes up and offers his help to the system. We then get the first match of the night with the Inspiration, formerly the Iconics, and NXT and WWE with Mara Sade, formerly Jakara Jackson, the Metaphor with Noam Dar in NXT, and she was recently released. They faced off against the Elegance brand of Ash, Heather, and Imp by Elegance. In the end, though, the Inspiration hit the Idolizer on Heather by Elegance for the win. Gia Miller was attacked by Tessa Blanchard at Slammiversary and currently recovering. And for backstage interviewers this week, we got a Gabby Laspisa. She attempts to speak with Mike Santana and ask him about Slammiversary, and he gets up and walks away. She then sees Indy Hartwell and takes a moment to speak with her. During that time, Danny Luna comes up and thanks Indy for having her back last week. Then Victoria Crawford, formerly Alicia Fox in WWE, comes up and offers Indy and Danny to be their mentors. I wouldn't do that, but that's on them if they decide to. We then go to Eric Young and the Northern Armory. They're also backstage, and EY says that he is the only one who can cleanse TNA. No idea what that means. This man is on another little guru-ish evil villain path, so I'm intrigued to see what goes on there. We then get new TNA X Division champion Leon Slater. He came out to the ring and said that he's going to take the X Division back to its roots and make it about speed. He's then joined by, or he calls out, asks the new TNA tag champs, the Hardys, to join him in the ring. The Hardys speak about how special TNA is. This brings out Steve Macklin, and he came out and says that he's not happy that the TNA World Championships are held by NXT talent, and says it's up to them to hold the line for TNA. We then get a new no DQ match between Jake Something and Mance Warner, who came out with Steph DeLander. Jake hit the Black Hole Slam for the win. JC Jane then says that the TNA women are extremely talented but flawed, and vows that when people look at the TNA Knockouts title, the women's title, they will think of her. We then get the great hands of Order 4 versus Brian Myers and Matt Cardona, with the great hands getting the win after a member of Order 4's Secret Service team, big dude, I don't know who it is yet. I've tried finding out. I can't find out anything. But he was a big boy. But he attacked Matt Cardona, which allowed Skylar of the Great Hands to get the win. And then in the main event, we saw Mike Santana face off against Joe Hendry for the first time in a one-on-one match. Frankie Kazarian attempted to come out and sit with commentary team and was chastised by both of them and was ejected from ringside. Santana was the victor after a flurry of pin attempts from both men before Santana managed a reversal and got the 3. Hendry shook Mike's hand after the match. The reason why I talk about TNA this week is because I'm interested in what TNA has the potential to possibly do in the short term, and with the knowledge that they have about 4.5 years left roughly on their partnership deal with the WWE, what we could possibly see in the long term. Right now, as I stated, both of their world titles are held by NXT stars. That's a difficult boat to be in, and there's a lot of individuals that still have that bad taste in their mouth of how Vince McMahon operated and did business with the WWF, WWE. I don't know the particulars outside of it's a 5-year deal, partnership deal, to where they're going to be helping each other out in various ways. We will see talent back and forth between the two. To what extent that talent goes, I don't know, but we saw their champion at WrestleMania. Granted, it wasn't in a main event match, but their champion, Joe Hendry, at the time went against one of the top guys in the WWE in Randy Orton. So that's nothing to turn your nose up at. Randy had nothing but great things to say about Joe after the fact. And it was actually Randy that wanted and pushed for the match. With that said, in the short term, with everything that happened and the verbiage that was used on Impact Thursday night by TNA talent, I do feel that with the SummerSlam coming up this weekend, the next big event for the WWE is Survivor Series. And I foresee a TNA NXT Survivor Series War Games match in the short term. Who ends up being in that, I'm not sure. We've still got a couple of months to go. Survivor Series is Thanksgiving weekend, I believe. So we've got a little bit of time to build towards this. And that is one of the things that they are getting right now. They're getting 100% right. They are building this, and they're telling stories. And they're not just telling a story on NXT and then telling a story on TNA. They're telling stories on NXT and Impact, and you've got to watch both, or you're going to be lost a little bit or behind. And that's smart. That's keeping people, making it must-watch TV. And that's how you get and keep viewers, by keeping stories. At the end of the day, this is a soap opera, people. This is theater. You can have all the flips, all the dives, all the fancy chain wrestling and all of that. It really means shit at the end of the day if there's not a story to compel you. And that's what we're seeing. And for the long run, I feel that this is building towards, hopefully, us seeing TNA not just in the NXT universe and match scene, but also in eventually down the road in the WWE Raw and SmackDown, where we're seeing TNA talent show up on Raw and SmackDown, and Raw and SmackDown talent showing up on TNA, and then at pay-per-views, and eventually down the road, TNA talent possibly holding major WWE gold, because this at the moment looks lopsided, but again, we still have about 4.5 years left in this agreement. So there's a ton of time for a lot of exciting shit to happen. This is Forbidden Door so far, to me, in my opinion, being done right. It may not look on an even keel, like I'm scratching your back, you're scratching mine, and we're both putting the same amount of energy into it at the moment. But like an onion, so far they're showing you that this shit has layers, and you have to be there and tune in to see it. And that's just good fucking business, good wrestling, and good TV. Thank you. I think you're muted.
Muted.
I'm muted. I'm so sorry. I was just saying, I can see why you've wanted to go into TNA this week with everything that's going on with NXT, and that honestly makes me want to go and watch it. So that might be my daughter and I's next stop on TV, because I just like the names and the storylines and the potential of where it can go. It just feels, I don't know, feels great. Yeah. Like Raw and SmackDown and any version of that just bore me, and like I'm not interested. But I like the cross promotional stuff, and like you said, Forbidden Door done right, man. That sounds great. Thank you as always.
Thank you.
Let us wrap up the show with our man Dave Scooby, our fantasy booker, in a segment we call "I Respect You, Booker Man." Well, oh, that's not the one there. There it is. Dave Scooby, fantasy booker. What is going on with the what ifs? You got what if? I love your what ifs. They're great. What if Hulk Hogan wasn't the third man in the New World Order?
Well, my thought is that if Hogan hadn't been the third man in the NWO, while the NWO still would have been around, and the impact and success may not have been as significantly, it'd probably be very different than what it was. And if you've heard Bischoff talk and other people talk about who was the original guy that was supposed to, I believe they said Sting was the backup plan, or he was the first one, and then Hogan took an interest because he wanted to be involved with something that was new and different.
Right.
So any other choice besides Hogan, I mean, it would have resulted in a less impactful storyline and probably a smaller cultural footprint for the NWO. Because when you look at it, granted, Hogan wasn't the Hogan of the 80s when he went to WCW in, I believe, 94. It took a couple years, and people just, WCW wasn't buying the Hulk Hogan, wasn't buying the red and yellow. Right. He was a mainstream star, sure, but I mean, him turning and becoming a heel was a major shock to all of the wrestling world. I mean, by name recognition alone, the contrast between his iconic good guy persona and say your prayers, eat your vitamins, and then becoming the villainous nature, the villain in the New World Order, I mean, it helped boost it to the storyline to another level. Now, if Sting was the original person that they were looking at. He was a popular babyface in WCW, but he wasn't on the same level of Hogan in terms of mainstream recognition. His character was firmly established as being a hero figure, and while his heel turn, it would have been intriguing. I mean, I don't think it would have the same impact as Hogan.
Right.
Granted, when he became the Crow, he was the good bad guy. But in the NWO, he would have just been the bad guy. That the NWO wouldn't have had the success, I believe, in people liking the bad guy. I mean, being fueled by Hogan's turn, the NWO was a major player in the Monday Night Wars between WCW and WWF. It drew significant mainstream attention. I mean, they were on The Tonight Show. They were all over TV. They had tons of guest hosts coming into WCW to be involved in storyline. I mean, WCW began competing with WWF in ratings and buys on pay-per-views, and I believe a less impactful NWO might have resulted in a less intense or even a shorter Monday Night War. While other wrestlers, like there was talk of Shawn Michaels or even Bret Hart, they could have been considered, and Bret Hart for a time was in WCW. I don't think they possess the same combination of star power and a shock to the audience that Hogan did. The NWO success was deeply tied to the shock value of, oh my God, Hogan's a bad guy now. It's something you never thought you'd see. And I mean, like today, John Cena is a heel, but is he really a heel? He's a bad guy, but he's not hated. They're not throwing trash in the ring. Hogan, his turn signified the best and worst of both Hogan and the wrestling, what wrestling meant to people. That, I mean, I think they could have still existed, the NWO, with another member besides Hogan, but I don't think they'd have the same level of success or cultural impact. I mean, to this day, you still see NWO shirts at wrestling events.
Yeah.
It may have been a 6-month, maybe even a year story, but I think it more would have been, okay, Kevin Nash and Scott Hall, they would have either been more tag champs or Scott Hall would have had a run as a world champion. But with Hogan being in there, he was, I mean, Hogan's heel turn, it not only helped WCW, but it forced WWF to adopt a more edgy and adult-oriented programming, and that became the Attitude Era. And I don't think if the NWO, without their influence, the Attitude Era might not have been as revolutionary or even maybe even taken a different form entirely. And I mean, it's one of these things, like I said, to this day, I mean, you're talking almost 30 years later, you'll see NWO shirts in the ring. You still see AEW shirts in the ring. There's not many things that have a lasting effect on wrestling fans and the wrestling society as a whole. So it's one of these things that the NWO might have been something, but I don't think they would have been as big of a deal as they became. Granted, they were watered down when they did their split, and they had 40 plus members. It was the Wolf Pack, the red and black, and the white and black, and it became overwhelming.
Yeah.
But it's one of these things that I think if they would have just kept Hogan there and maybe limited to maybe 10 or 15 people at the most, it could have worked better. It worked up to a certain point, but you can only get so much gas mileage out of what happened during the Monday Night Wars before you have to come up with something new. And WCW tried doing like the New Breed and all this, but they were never able to recapture what the NWO was, and also trying to do the NWO versus DX in the WWF, WWE down the line. It's good for memory, for remembering what was, but it didn't live up to the hype.
83 weeks, I think the number was, right? That they WCW had the edge over WWE. It seems impossible now, and they rode that NWA into the ground, NWO into the ground. And I agree. It could have lasted longer. Could have been better. It's we had some bad booking going on at the same time, but at the like I was a younger guy, we all were, but it was a matter for me of guys, please just turn it into NWO Nitro, change the sets totally rather than just that. I think they started doing that with Thunder. They take over the announce position, and and do stuff. But let's get a hero in here. We all thought it was going to be Sting, and then we remember how that turned out after that huge buildup, and they just kind of lost it over time. But I agree, man. I don't think it could have been for all of the shit that we've given Hulk Hogan tonight. I don't think it could have been anyone else. If it had been Sting, if it had been Randy Savage, we would have gone, oh, cool. But, to see Hogan after all those years making the turn and just, and the whole career turn, I think that you're right. I don't think it could have been anyone else. Thanks, Dave. Appreciate it.
No problem.
Well, fellas, I think that's it, and that's all. It's an hour and a half right where we want to live. And let's go. Let's go to the socials. Where can they find you, Dave?
You can find me Instagram, X, and Blue Sky at Dave Scooby. Hit me up there if you guys have any suggestions or ideas for some fancy bookings or just discussions that we can have dealing with wrestling.
Yep, 100%. Absolutely, boss. You got it.
Yep.
Jeremy, what about you, my friend?
You can find me on Facebook at Jeremy Miller, and I think I still have the Blue Sky app. I don't know. But in the words of Sheiky Baby, fuck the Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, you break his back, make him humble. I am back on the Facebook. It's facebook.com/Big Clumsy, actually. But you can look me up under Tim Wood on Facebook. I'm not on any other social media. Haven't been for a while. Don't judge me. I don't judge you. I went back. There's reasons. This man doesn't judge down here. This is we love you too, boss. Most importantly, at the Alliance blog on all of the social media sites, we're on. What are we on? We're on Kick. We're on X.
TikTok. We're on YouTube. We're on Twitter. We're on Facebook, OnlyFans, X videos.
Yeah.
And MySpace.
Right. Yeah, 100%. Oh, and True Social. Don't forget that one.
Yes.
At the Alliance blog. Tumblr. We're on Tumblr. Guys, the hub. We're on Poob. Guys, we're pooping right now. The Telegram.
Feet Finder.
We're on Skip the Dishes. Pinterest. We are on Pinterest. I have a Pinterest page. What else? And so tune in, please. There's more of these.
Yep.
Good shit, boss.
Oh, man. Yeah, I have the Alliance blog on all the socials. Join us every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific for the Alliance Guys podcast. That's with Jay Cal, DKM, and Jaden. As far as I know, it's still Tuesday at 5 p.m., but Jay might tell us before we go off the air, if he's quick on the fingers, about whether or not the pre-party will still be at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific, that hour before Power. Since tomorrow night, Roku, right? 8 p.m. And, yeah, grind. $20, $20. No changes. So that's when you're on the air still. There you go. Hey, follow our friends at Dangerous Adrenaline Wrestling Gladiators, won't you? DogProWrestling.com. And on YouTube, that's Jaden. He and helps Dr. Lauren Zirconium get that product off the ground. It's a great show. I've been down to New Jersey to see it. That's it. That's all. Until next time, leave the back door open for us because we'll see you at the matches.
Thanks for joining the stream. This has been a presentation of Alliance-Wrestling.com. We genuinely appreciate your support. Would you consider subscribing so you'll never miss a future episode? I'd also like to remind you we do a live stream every Tuesday at 5 p.m. before NWA Power. You can find us on social media at The Alliance Blog. And until next time, we are The Alliance.